So at this time, I want to introduce Elijah McIntosh. He's the Secretary of the Nation in Commerce with the Muskogee Creek Nation and Chairman of the Oklahoma Tribal Finance Consortium, and he'll discuss the outcomes of the report.
Thank you, Governor Wasana. As Chairman of the Oklahoma Tribal Finance Consortium, I'm honored to be here today to discuss the results of the Native Economic Impact Report. This report proves that tribes are good for Oklahoma. As this study shows, we continually invest millions into the communities and local economies in which we live. It's been widely reported the past few weeks that our direct employment alone well exceeds 50,000 jobs, and this is true. We do exceed that much in direct employment. But this report also reflects that in addition to that number, it goes beyond to further estimate the total number of jobs that tribal nations support in the state of Oklahoma. This means that in addition to those that we directly employ ourselves, the number of jobs that are created and maintained in Oklahoma because of tribal operations. As an employer and job creator, through our business and government operations, tribal nations in total support 96,177 jobs. And probably just as important, these jobs represent $4.6 billion in wages and benefits to Oklahoma workers. These are good jobs with health insurance, 401k plans, and other benefits. You could say that for every job a tribal nation creates, the state of Oklahoma gets two in return. Many may not know this, but through the Tribal Transportation Program, tribal nations each year bring in federal dollars that the state of Oklahoma would not otherwise receive. Collectively, each year, tribal nations bring in the state of Oklahoma $42.5 million in federal roads money. This money is used to improve Oklahoma's roads and bridges for all Oklahomans, native and non-native alike. Oklahoma is number one in tribal transportation funding received. All told, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation estimates that since 1980, tribal nations have invested over $200 million for construction and maintenance of state Oklahoma roads, bridges, and other transportation projects. This equates to nearly 27,000 miles of roads that are used by all Oklahomans. But beyond just improving roads and bridges for economic reasons, through partnerships with the state, we also invest to perform critically needed safety projects, and according to ODOT, get them completed ahead of schedule. These improvements not only drive economic success, but they make Oklahoma a safer place to travel. Another area tribal nations invest to the great benefit of Oklahoma is in healthcare. Healthcare providers are pulling out of rural areas, tribal nations are moving in. As a result, tribal nations are becoming the healthcare safety net in rural communities. And as Dr. Dean states in the report, these investments push against the gravity of the rural to urban migration occurring throughout the nation. This impacts rural communities by not just keeping people there, but keeping jobs there. Some of these facilities even provide services to non-Indians. For example, both of the Muskogee Creek Nation's hospitals located in Okemah and Okmulgee serve the public. These are facilities that are not funded by the state, but are built and operated because of tribal nations. But more than just facilities, on an annual basis, we bring in funding that otherwise would not come to the state of Oklahoma. As stated in the report, just last year, $213 million was paid to tribes for Medicaid expenditures. What's important about this is that when tribal nations provide the service, the state of Oklahoma doesn't have to provide the 41.43% of the cost they normally have to reimburse at non-tribal facilities. As a result, this study estimates that services provided by tribal nations saved the state of Oklahoma $88 million in 1 year. This is for the reduction of Medicaid matching payments from the state that otherwise. And this frees up money for the state legislature to fund other priorities. Essentially, another contribution to the state of Oklahoma's government. Tribal nations invest to make Oklahoma a healthier state. And of course, one of the biggest areas of investment you'll find by tribal nations is in education. As has been reported recently over the years, tribes have paid over $1.5 billion in exclusivity fees, with more than $1.3 billion of that going to education. And this is true, but in fact, we actually provide millions more than this figure even represents. In addition to operating and funding Head Starts, primary and secondary schools, and colleges, we fund millions of dollars in scholarships. In 2007 alone, outside of exclusivity fees, Tribal nations provided more than $80 million in funding to Oklahoma educational institutions. This additional support comes in the form of scholarships and direct donations to school districts. We are contributing and sponsoring everything from educational equipment like books, computers and software, to wrestling mats, sports uniforms, STEM camps, and robotic programs. Education has always and will always be a high priority for tribal nations. All told, these investments represent areas of the state of Oklahoma and all Oklahomans have come to rely on. Now, the biggest reason for conducting this study was to identify a quantifiable and supportable number to represent the total impact of tribal nations on the state of Oklahoma. The total impact is calculated to include additional production, employment, and compensation generated by Oklahoma companies in response to tribal activities, including the impacts by households and governments receiving income from tribal activities. Through these efforts, the study reports in 2017, tribal nations had a $12.9 billion economic impact in the state of Oklahoma. Our government's diverse industries and businesses are growing and thriving, but our 2017 impact reinforces that we continually make wise investments to the benefit of all Oklahoma. The study truly reveals how important we are to Oklahoma. And while our employment and total impact are impressive, let's not forget that just beyond jobs, tribal nations invest in making Oklahoma safer. While our investments in roads and bridges, healthcare, and education are more visible and more discussed, we also invest in areas such as public safety. In many parts of the state, our law enforcement agencies have cross-immunization agreements with cities, counties, and in some instances, federal agencies, including the U.S. Marshals. We provide assistance for special events, patrols in rural areas with few officers, and contribute equipment that rural communities would not have access to. In addition, many tribal nations have emergency management teams. During the recent flooding, you wouldn't have to go far to see tribal emergency management teams working side by side with our local and state counterparts. When the state of Oklahoma has needed us, tribal nations have answered the call. In closing, I've heard a lot of discussion on kind of what tribes pay into the state of Oklahoma. And it should be discussed because, yes, we support over 96,000 jobs in the state and pay $4.6 billion in wages and benefits. Yes, we spend over $42 million to improve Oklahoma's roads and bridges. And yes, we make Oklahoma healthier and safer to live in. This is a truly momentous day in Indian country, and we are thrilled to tell the story. For additional information and a link to the full study, please visit our website at www.oknativeimpact.com. For this, I say Mado and thank you.
You know, what was originally meant for our demise, the removal, I'm sure it was meant for our demise, has actually turned out to benefit the land that we live on. And all of the citizens in the state of Oklahoma are now benefactors.